Hello and welcome to Locator Gaming. This video is one video in a series of 3 videos about Compass Games' Battle of Gettysburg game and the Battle Hymn system. 2 of the videos are me talking about my playthrough of the game, and the 3rd video is kind of a time-lapse video of the pieces moving across the board. So if you haven't seen those other 2 videos, go ahead and check those videos out. And if you like what you see here, please hit the subscribe, the like button, and that bell icon for the notifications. All right, so I finished the night turns for July 1st, and the Union did a little bit better as far as bringing units back onto the board. There are a lot of 1 strength units out there, though. And I kind of maneuvered Johnson here into the middle for the Confederate side. So I think the plan for the Confederates here, we still got a couple of good brigades for roads. I think it's actually important to talk about the victory for the 2nd day. So the Confederate victory is still going to be based upon taking the victory point spaces. You got to own these 3 right here on Culp's Hill and have more victory points than the Union, or all 5 of these Cemetery Hill ones here and more victory points, or Little Round Top and Big Round Top and more victory points. So we can either, push for that side like was done historically with, I think it was Hood's division. I can't remember for sure. They're not on the board yet. And then I do have a really good portion of Longstreet's corps here. These are really strong units, all really high morale and a 7, 5, 5, and 5 strength points. So we've got some good roads units here. Maybe we'll push against the hill here again. But I moved Johnson down here, and Anderson is still pretty okay. He got some of his strength points rallied during the night, so maybe he can help push on the hill. So maybe Rhodes is good stuff and Anderson's good stuff. Could try to make an attack on these 2 spots here. Union 3rd Corps moved up the side here. It's the Confederate right flank. They might try to press an attack over here. I moved the 12th Corps. They were positioned up here in the forest. I moved them into position, since they're completely fresh, onto the victory point spots to hold those. And the 11th Corps did very bad in their rally attempt rolls, but I think I'll move the 11th Corps up into the woods up here just to hold the flank. A bunch of 1-point units, but they're not really victory point spots, and I do have some good cavalry up there still. So we'll try to have the weak 11th Corps hold up there. The Iron Brigade came back in a huge fashion. They are almost all back. They have the one, you have to have at least 1 demoralized unit or strength point. But as a +3 unit, they rally a lot. They were able to rally 3 points the first night phase and another 2 the second one because they couldn't get all 6 back. There's not a whole lot of strength in the 1st Corps there, so I'm thinking maybe they'll try to hold right here, and I'm thinking about counterattacking. So Hancock may just push through, instead of having Hancock come up and take defensive positions. I may force an attack with Hancock. So that's the 2nd Corps here. They might just come through this hole and push this way. We'll see. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do yet. If I'm just going to have Johnson and Anderson and Rhodes and just all converge on here, and then send Longstreet this way, and that might make Hancock change his mind. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens, how the chits come out of the cut for day 2. But this will be the setup going into July 2nd. Okay, so I just finished first turn on July 2nd, so turn 14 overall for the game. Did a little bit of maneuvering to get a line ready. I don't even know if I'm actually going to press that attack, but we'll see. Might move something in to try to hit these two guys. They're out on their own. And moving Longstreet's guys in here. And when these guys were trying to come in, who is this? McLaws was still back here, so he was kind of blocking the road. So we're going to take the trail, and we'll see how far I take the trails to maybe come around, put pressure on this way. That's Hood's division there. So I think I might try to take, I don't know if McLaws, depends on what happens, but now I'm a little nervous about 3rd Corps pushing in on all these guys over here. I did artillery bombardment during the combat turn for both sides. Actually got a couple of demoralization hits over here, and I think it was Wainwright got 2 demoralization hits on Jones. He failed his morale test. But that's about it that happened during the turn. And I guess Hancock is coming in. I left out 3rd Corps and the artillery reserve because I didn't want these guys to just get bottled up in the traffic jam. And I also left out the artillery reserve for the same reason from the Cup. And I left out Early and Pender, Heath, the Cavalry Corps for the Union, just some people that I didn't think needed to move at all. So we get into turn 15. We're starting here, even more and more Union units start coming onto the board. So the Confederate side is going to start to get a little overwhelmed, so we got to do something. And I'm a little cognizant of the fact that the South did not attack for quite a while on the second day, if I'm not mistaken. I think it took them a while to make the maneuver over, and they weren't expecting anybody to be over here. But I think it was the 5th Corps that took position over here and kind of surprised Longstreet's guys when they were attacking. They were not expecting them to be there. So I may just go at all costs and try to press them off the high ground here, knowing that that's what the game says is the victory condition for the Confederates. And the Union, what the Union is planning on doing is holding that high ground as a defensive position, and Hancock is going to come over here and make a line in front, maybe 4 or 5 across, and then push in here. And maybe we'll have 3rd Corps move in and attack this turn also. So I'll come back when something interesting gets set up. All right, so I'm a little bit into turn 15. I moved Early's guys over to the side and to plug a hole up there just so that the right flank of this section here of Johnson just did not get completely surrounded. And then the 3rd Corps got to take their turn. Some of their reinforcements moved on, and they were kind of up here, and they shifted down because the Union plan is to have Hancock fill in the rest there and attack this direction. So they're putting some pressure on. I also drew out both of Longstreet's divisions, Hood and McLaws, and I had McLaws take a turn down. I'm going to go for the historical swing around to the right. And who knows, McLaws might have to clean this up here eventually too. He's got really high morale units. Hood's really high morale too. All of Longstreet's stuff is really high morale. And then the Union combat chit came out of the Cup. So it's time to do all of this combat right here. We'll come back and show you the results of that. Well, I'm sure you can tell that that was kind of a disaster. They did inflict quite a few hits though. They just didn't drive anybody back except for the artillery. they got really, really bad rolls, even with the advantage of infantry versus artillery. And the canister fire from that artillery did quite a bit. And there was one division, the one that was out here by himself, he had 3 guys shooting at him. So he was kind of in trouble. It would have been nicer if Hancock could have moved up before the combat turn shit came out, but that's not how things happened. So we'll see. They had to retreat. Some of it from combat. Ward's division down here actually wasn't hurt at all, or Ward's brigade, sorry, wasn't hurt at all. And he was in 2 rounds of combat with Avery down here, who also survived. So that was a little bit of a failed attack in the morning of July 2nd, checking the Confederate line there, and they got beat back. So we'll keep drawing chits. All right, I think I've played through maybe a turn and a half or 2 turns since the last time I came on, because there wasn't a whole lot of stuff that happened as far as like combat goes. There was a lot of maneuvering. There was just some artillery bombardment and maybe a demoralization here or there in the artillery bombardments during the combat turns. But what I wanted to come back and talk about is what I'm thinking about as the current strategy that I'm sticking to for both players, trying to play both sides without knowing what the other side is actually going to do. So we'll start with the Confederate turn. So the Confederates have decided to just set up, try to get Longstreet's guys into place over here and kind of wait it out until they get the initiative so they can pick when their combat chit is pulled. So then they can move their line forward all at once and all attack together, hopefully on the same turn or as much as possible. So they're just going to be trying to set up for 3 or so more turns, depending upon what happens with the Union player's turn. What the Union player is trying to do, so he's basically up here, he's keeping the 11th Corps up here. They're pretty weak. Most of them only have 1 intact strength point, except for no, it's not the 11th Corps that has a new unit. So they're just guarding the woods up there and guarding that flank, along with the cavalry over there on the extreme flank. 12th Corps is in charge of Cemetery Hill. They're all still pretty intact, although Candy keeps getting pounded with artillery fire, and Green actually took 1 from artillery fire. So I don't know if you can tell, but I just got this huge bank of artillery here, and they're all just shooting, trying to weaken this up before the attack comes. It's at the maximum range for most of them, and it's sometimes on the same level, sometimes uphill. So you're looking for 1s on the dice on a D10, so you got a 10% chance of scoring a hit, and then roughly a 50-50, depending upon which unit I'm shooting at, based on their morale, for that hit actually having an effect. So you just hope that on every turn, chucking a whole bunch of dice, that maybe you score at 1 or 2 hits just to soften it up a little bit. 1st Corps is also pretty hurt, except for the Iron Brigade, so they're guarding Cemetery Ridge right here. They're not going to stay off Cemetery Ridge. Hancock came on the board, and his orders are he went into this hole that was here, and he's actually going to press an attack. I took this turn to spread his line out. I could have made it up with some of them to press the attack, but I'm going to wait. Decided to wait a turn to just press with the whole line. So that's going to be a Union attack there. 2nd Corps is guarding the flank down here. And then 5th Corps, who's got a couple of lead guys who came on the board and some more reinforcements who just came on the board. They're going to get a couple more next turn. Their job is to come down and will either take position up here on Warfield's Ridge or maybe a little bit further, depending upon where Longstreet is at the time. This is better defensible ground right here. It's up higher, it's in the woods. So we're kind of taking, instead of the historical fishhook on this day, was from Culp's Hill down along Cemetery Ridge and back to Little Round Top. So the Union was here historically. I'm pressing out a little farther. And I don't know if this is actually an advisable attack. It's going to be an open ground, but we'll see how it goes. So that's what I'm going to kind of stick to is next turn, assuming the combat turn chit doesn't come out first, I will probably press the attack with the second corps. And I did also mark that the Union has gone through 2 more of these control points. There's a couple more 3rd Corps reinforcement guys who are going through in between the Round Tops and Devil's Den, and they're going to come join up over here as well. So I have a feeling that 5th Corps may end up, I don't know, down here or maybe even pressing, depending upon how Longstreet gets set up. So we'll see. It's kind of ending up ironically, with the Southern Army on the northern half of the map and the Northern Army on the southern half of the map. All right, I'm a little bit into turn 17 on July 2nd, and not too much has happened so far other than Hancock's chit came out, so the 2nd Corps, and I'm sticking with what I said the plan was for him, to just push across that plain and press into this line and hope to beat up some of these really weak Confederate units and chase them from the field. So you can see the entire corps got engaged, except for the artillery piece. The guys that were hanging out up here went through, before they got into the Zocs, you know, they went through their friendlies. There was enough room for them to go through their friendlies and end up there. And the 2 guys that were kind of in the back in reserve were able to find holes. The guys that were down here kind of spread out this way. These guys spread out that way, and we filled in the middle from the guys that were in the back. So when a combat chit comes out, there's going to be some interesting decisions to be made by one side or the other. Well, and the very next chit that comes out is the Confederate Combat Turn chit, and I had already pulled the Union chit. I had taken a break, and I forgot I had pulled theirs already, and they had done some bombardment, and actually did weaken a couple of guys during their bombardment. So now it's the Confederate player's decision. I think he's going to stick it out. I mean, he's got all this artillery that can bombard before the approach fire, and that's even before he chooses on retreating. So, I mean, I have been using this huge bank of artillery to weaken, you know, not very successfully, but it has knocked some points off as demoralized units on the ridge up here. But I may take the opportunity, since, you know, most of these guys are on higher ground than these guys coming in, to just bombard this line, get the approach fire. Not a lot of these 2nd Corps guys have very many strength points. A lot of them are 3 or 4. We've got Johnson's division here that's completely fresh. Wilcox here, I think, has 5 strength points. We've got 1 of McLaw's brigades engaged down here. The only weak spot is kind of here. These guys probably only have 1 or 2 strength points left. So that's not great. But I'll do this combat, and I'll come back and show you the carnage afterwards. This is going to be a long combat turn. Well, that was a disaster for the Union player. The Confederate artillery has not done very much the entire game, but for some reason it must have been saving up, because the bombardments did really well in the attack, weakened those units. And like I was saying before, at least I think I said it before, a lot of those second corps units only had 3 or 4 strength points to begin with. You knock off 1 or 2 in the bombardment on 3 or 4 of those guys, and I'm telling you, those rolls were so lucky. And then the approach fire took off another couple here and there. There just wasn't a whole lot to hit back. I think there was only 1 Confederate unit that actually left the board. There was damage done. I know Perrin got damaged more, Hayes, and you can probably see there's 1 unit from Second Corps for the Union player left here on the hill. He's got 1 intact strength point left. 2 rounds of combat couldn't force him off, and so the Confederate player had to retreat after the second round. Barksdale is part of McLaws. He had to retreat after the first round of combat because he failed his morale test after he got hit. So in this version of Gettysburg, I don't think there would be a Pickett's charge. There would be a Hancock's charge, because basically his entire corps was wiped out. It went 2 rounds of combat for most of them. And the rolls were just on the Confederate side. I mean, I think even like the Irish Brigade, they had they needed to roll a 7 or less to hit, and I think I rolled 2 9s or a 9 and a 10. It just was not good rolls for the Union player. So now I'll have to really think about what the strategy for the Union player should be. Luckily, he's got the 5th Corps still stringing in here. 3rd Corps is kind of left out here hanging now that Hancock is gone. Maybe they'll pull back onto this high ground here. Or maybe we go historical and put 5th Corps and 3rd Corps down here by the peach orchard. Maybe we just go maybe completely historical and go up onto the round tops. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about it. But I think it's time for 3rd Corps to move back. I mean, he's pretty strong here still. Ish. And this is really good ground. This is on a hill in a forest. It's just there's this huge hole here now. But 5th Corps could plug that hole, I guess, fairly quickly. Confederate player is still, I think, waiting until they get the initiative and they can decide when they're going to press the attack. They want to finish getting Longstreet into place over the next couple of turns before they actually decide to attack later in the day. So pretty eventful turn. Yeah, who would have thought that, charging over open ground at fresh infantry who have an entire artillery bank behind them was a bad idea. All right, so that's the end of turn 17. And I did actually decide with the Confederate player, while we had the chance, we moved up and kind of surrounded, not really surrounded, but we've got 3 guys on 1 guy of the 3rd Corps here. And Hood got to move up a little bit. So we've got really fresh troops coming in line over here. 5th Corps moved down and the artillery reserve moved down. I'm going to have the artillery take up position on the high ground over here on the round tops. And I have, I'm going to put 5th Corps in these woods over here, kind of by the peach orchard in front of Devil's Den. And kind of just guard this over here. There's no new reinforcements that come in on turn 18. Not a lot of movement on the Confederate side over here. Still just holding until we get the initiative for the Confederates. And the Union player has no desire to give up those victory point spots and come down and fight again in the open. Although he's got fresh troops with the 12th Corps here, the Iron Brigade is fresh here, but the rest of these 1st Corps troops here are pretty weak, and all these 11th Corps troops over here are also very weak, only 1 intact strength point. Fortunately, though, they're in really good terrain, and there's not a lot of strong stuff from the Confederacy over here either. Even though it's really good terrain, we'll see what happens when the attack gets pressed from the Confederates. But I think right now the Union player is going to be content to just hold the defensive positions. Probably run the 3rd Corps back to go alongside of the 5th Corps here. And in a couple of turns, we've got the 6th Corps that's going to be coming in also from that map edge over there. Might be just in time to maybe shift out some of these torn up guys. Although it's risky, depending upon when the chits come out. If you pull those guys off of there, so then you have the space available for the fresh guys to get up there, does that leave it open for the Confederates to run up and grab the high ground? That's awfully risky. So we'll see how things come out. We'll do turn 18. Probably going to be a pretty quiet turn, mostly just moving, so I might not be back again until the end. Well, I'm about halfway through turn 18, and I just wanted to pop in because, so we had this guy surrounded, but his approach fire took out 1 unit, because then I pulled out the Confederate combat chit. His approach fire took out 1 unit, and oh, actually, he would not be able to retreat this way. He would have to go like that. He was actually here, and 2 rounds of combat, they didn't do anything to each other. So he has to retreat after that 2nd round of combat. So whoever's left in the 1 intact strength point, this is Brooks' Brigade of the 2nd Corps, they all deserve like Congressional Medal of Honor or something. Because they have stood out. And now when the 12th Corps, or sorry, when the 2nd Corps' movement chit comes out, they're going to be able to just hightail it out of there to the rear. But I thought I had them good and surrounded, but bad rolls on the Confederate side. Even with the -2s, because with him surrounded, I was rolling like 9s and 10s, and with him in the forest, well, that approach fire rolled a 1, I think, so that always hits, and there was no damage done on this side. And after this guy was eliminated, he was no longer surrounded, so he got pretty lucky there. All right, that's the end of turn 18. I drew Early's division out before the 2nd Corps, so they were able to re-surround the 2nd Corps here. At some point I also drew out the combat chit, but I think that was before that happened for the Union, and they were able to bombard O'Neill up here pretty good from Osborne right there. He's got 5 at a +1 morale, and I think he hit 2, added 2 demoralized things there. Before last time too, the whole line of our Confederate artillery did some damage to this spot and this spot on the Union also, and those are the 2 spots I've kind of been concentrating on just to weaken them, and I think they've got them down to 3 intact out of 6 from just constant bombarding, except for that turn when they bombarded, 2nd Corps. The 2nd Corps artillery was able to move out, and the Union 5th Corps has kind of taken up positions in these woods in the high ground right behind the peach orchard, but in front of the round tops, and we've got an artillery lineup up on the high ground over here. they won't be able to see anything that's happening right here, but at least they're there in case anybody charges up there. And we kind of got developing a, you know, 2 of Longstreet's divisions from his corps here facing a slightly weakened 3rd Corps, but not too bad, and an entirely fresh Union 5th Corps there. Way better morale on this side. So these guys can throw a lot of dice with pretty good to-hit numbers. Might be able to do some damage over here. So we'll see if I decide to... I don't know if throwing them against these guys on the high ground is a smart idea. We'll see what develops. The next turn is 19, where the Confederates are going to get their initiative. So I still kind of have the plan of, you know what, let's press an all-out attack now. You know, since we get to choose when the combat chit comes out, if I wait till the end, we might not get to coordinate, because if the Union one comes out, they can always retreat, but retreating off of those victory point spots doesn't seem like a smart idea. But right here is all fresh 12th Corps, except for these guys that have been hit by the bombardments. Pretty weak over here. Iron Brigade is 5 strength points with a +3. So that spot right there is highly deadly and needs to be avoided. So I'm thinking about, you know, trying to pick off these 2 guys are out there by themselves, and maybe, you know, maybe just send people into these 7 spots right here for the attack to just try to put down as much hurt on these front 4 guys as possible. And then that might, if they get pushed out or eliminated, maybe we can advance and then have a second round against that stuff up there. We'll see. It'll be interesting. This will probably be the last big attack that can happen from the Confederate left flank. There's also Union reinforcements coming in the next 2 turns back there. So if they don't push these guys off and out of here, there's going to be all new fresh troops coming in that probably can just mow through those guys who will be weakened. And we don't get Pickett's division until tomorrow morning, and which is the last bit of Confederate reinforcements. There could be some rallying during the night, but it's really hard to rally points back. And you got to move back. You got to be out of line of sight in order to rally. So we shall see what happens in the next turn. All right, so I've done all of the movement. I think, yeah, all the movement chits have been taken out. The Union had their combat turn early, so this got decided here. It was pretty easy. He didn't have luck that time in the approach fire, and they took him out. Since he was surrounded, it was easy for them to get rid of him. Some bombardment actually finished off Jones from Johnson's division. So Jones never even got to get into the fight. He was out there most of the day just getting bombarded by Wainwright, I think it was. But as you can see, lots of things on the board have changed. I had decided that it was not smart to take my best 2 divisions left on the board and attack this terrible ground over here that was just had guys dug into it. So I started to move McLaws up this way. I had thought about trying to press into this side of Cemetery Ridge, and I was going to bring Hood up behind him to maybe protect the flank and maybe attack into 5th Corps. But when McLaws got up there, then the 5th Corps' chit came out, and they decided, you know what, let's just press. They got 4 guys, or 4 brigades around these 2 of McLaws. Is it McLaws? I keep saying that. Yeah, it's McLaws. And they actually were able to push a guy up here too. That's going to change the odds that where this guy now can only throw 1 die at each unit around him. So, and you know, Anderson moved in and Rhodes moved in. I had more units than I thought I was going to be able to throw at the front line. So everybody kind of shifted over this way a little bit. And I moved the artillery up. And now it's time to do the combat turn. This is probably going to take a while, and it's probably going to be super bloody. And this will probably decide the game here on how this goes. So the Confederates are going to get to do their bombardment first. We don't have any cavalry to retreat, so we'll do our bombardment. I don't think there's any retreating attackers. I mean, maybe I could retreat that guy out, but then someone else is going to have to retreat out. And that's not good. So I think this will be the line for the attack. All right, that took forever. I don't know, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes or so. It was a lot of combat. And as you can see, it's blank here on Cemetery Hill and the start of Cemetery Ridge. The Confederates did make it up to this point here. Or was it here? Now I can't remember. They made it up to one of these, I think both of these spots maybe, and those are not victory point spots. You can also probably see that there are a lot of Confederate units that are gone. Attacking over here on the Union left and the Confederate right cost the Union a lot, but it also helped them because this brigade here was able to push up, and that really changed, I shouldn't say really changed, but it changed the combat on the flank down here and kind of put this unit here at a disadvantage. That unit just melted. And then of course you've got the Iron Brigade here who is sitting on the clump of trees, which I'm assuming this is probably the angle, the famous angle on Cemetery Ridge. And with the +3, I mean, they're down to 3 intact strength points, but with that +3 added to their fire and on their morale, they're hard to dislodge from there. Stone here has only got 2. Paul, I think Paul's got 2 right there. So the problem for the Confederate Army is a lot of their guys are pretty hurt. There's only 1 intact strength point there. Perrin's got 3, I guess. He could help support. We did lose 1 of McClaw. We lost Barksdale. But there were 3 5th Corps units that were taken out. And Kershaw was hurt pretty bad. He's got 5 left out of his 7. He's actually pretty good. But up here, you've only got 1 strength point. All of this is artillery. These guys back here are only 1. That's a 2. I'm pretty sure Archer here is only a 1. Oh, that's a 2. Doles here is a 2. He had to retreat from the attack because he failed his morale. So it's all going to come down to on the next turn whose chits come out first. It's kind of a race to get some guys up onto this high ground. McClaw's can make it with these 2 really fresh high morale units and try to just hold some stuff and do some more damage over here. If the 6th Corps chit comes out first, they're going to be able to move in and hold the spots. And then it's just going to be starting all over again with trying to push them off. We might just leave the Iron Brigade alone and go for this over here. And try to bring Hood up for maybe a 3rd wave. So we can maybe have a 2nd wave and then a 3rd wave. Depending upon what happens in those, I might just have to call it after that, because I think a general in real life would look at the situation and want to preserve his army and not just keep throwing them to the wolves. Well, Wilcox here has 3. He had to retreat also. That's right. I think he was here fighting. He had to retreat back as he lost he failed his morale check. So you've still got some capability, but it's going to be a little rough. Like I said, it all depends upon whose chits come out of the cup first. So we'll have to check back in. All right, all of the movement turn chits have come out of the cup, and the only thing left is for the Confederate player to play his combat turn chit. Could have played it at any time during the turn, but with the initiative he gets to pick. And he wanted to get as many things engaged up there as possible. So I was able to get 2 fresh claws units up there. Perrin went up there. We've got some roads, brigades attacking over here. Now, the McLaw's chit did come out before the 6th Corps' chit did. So McLaw's was able to get up there, but he wasn't able to take one spot there. So the 6th Corps does hold one position in the front of Cemetery Hill there. And the 1st Corps actually shifted. Oh, there was a guy in reserve that came up to help here on the ridge. The Iron Brigade is not moving out of those trees. A couple other things of note. 3rd Corps decided to, well, Hood went first before the 3rd Corps, and Hood is moving up this direction. So 3rd Corps decided to just close this flank this way. There's no reason to guard this ridge here anymore without anybody threatening to come around this way. And if Hood continues to move out, 3rd Corps can probably press in this way. And kind of on the other side, the 11th Corps has moved out of their positions, opening up a spot on Culp's Hill, and some of them have already gone across the creek and will come up this way to threaten this side over here. Opened up some spots there for the rest of 6th Corps reinforcements that came on, can come either in there or down in here. After, we'll see how this combat goes. I just don't think there's enough strength left in the Confederate Army to continue to press on, but we'll see. Now, the artillery reserve for the Union has been one of the chits that I've been holding back. You have to hold back 3 for the Union Army and 4 for the Confederate Army every turn, and so that's one I've been holding back. So they're not really doing much guarding the round tops up there at the moment, but there was other units I thought needed to move. So okay, I'll be back after this combat is over. All right, I just did the combat. I actually stopped for the day yesterday, but because it was later than I thought it was before I went through and did that combat. And I think you can see another hole kind of opening up here on Cemetery Hill, on the edge of Cemetery Ridge. So there were some Union units that were knocked off and knocked back and pretty highly damaged. Like I think all 3 of these units here only have 1 strength point left. But the same almost holds true over here. I mean, there's 1, there's 2, there's 2. So not a lot of strength left to actually hold. And Hood is way down here. What's Kershaw got left? He's got 5. But the problem for the Confederate player and the good thing for the Union player is most of 6th Corps here is still fresh. So they can just push up and probably kick the Confederate units off of the hill. So it'll depend on what comes out of the cup. So at the moment, Confederate player holds probably, I know they hold this one. What are the other victory point spots? So it's these 5 here, or those 3 on Culp's Hill. So right now the Confederate player did not get into here. There was an eliminated Union unit there in the second round. But both of these are victory point spots, and they were the last to occupy that spot. But like I said, 6th Corps can probably just come in and cut them off. And I think the Union player is contemplating kind of just, if they get to go first or ahead of Hood, they might throw 5th and 3rd Corps at Hood just to keep him down here, so that he can't get up there. I mean, we've got 2 pretty fresh corps that can strike at Hood. If I would have been thinking as the Confederate player early on, instead of having Hood making his way this direction, I probably should have just piled everybody up that way, because he could have had 2 completely fresh divisions from Longstreet's Corps going on the hill there. So I will get started on turn 21, where the Confederate player is going to have the initiative again, and we will see what happens. Well, maybe a little bit of luck for the Confederate player, because the Union combat chit came out before the 6th Corps was able to move. So the Union player is not going to be able to initiate combat this turn. They can still move up when their chit comes out and get next to the Confederate player, and then when the Confederate player's chit comes out, or when he decides, because he has the initiative, he gets to decide when to play it. There could be combat, or he could decide to voluntarily retreat out. Anderson did move up the hill, and there was some artillery bombardment over here that took the last bit of intact strength points off of one of Rhodes' brigades up there. Artillery bombardment with the artillery down here didn't do anything, and I've still chosen to move other units over all of this reserve artillery sitting in the back here. So that's all that's happened so far on turn 21. A little bit of luck that I think for the Confederate player that the Union combat chit came out, but we'll see which one comes out next. All right, so I think the Confederate player is going to choose to play his combat turn chit now, before 5th Corps gets to push up a little bit farther. So Hood's division was the last one to move. I did notice I made a mistake. I should not have been able to move through here, but I would have retreated now that I'm playing the combat turn chit with that person. And I did take the hits for going through an enemy Zoc, but I wouldn't be able to go that far, right? I'd just be able to go there during the attacker retreat during combat step. But I'll go through and do this attack. This will probably decide. So I did actually decide I'm going to try to push the Iron Brigade off of the angle there, that clump of trees. I've got one of Hood's brigades up there, and then one of McClaw's. Who is that? It's Kershaw up there attacking the Iron Brigade. They're both +2 morales. Or no, Law's only a +1 from Hood's division. So I'll go through and do this. This is, like I said, this will probably be the decisive fight, because we've got some fresh 6th Corps troops attacking some very weak Confederate troops up there. So the Confederate player is just looking to get lucky on some rolls and see what happens. And we'll probably decide, because the 11th Corps is also making its way around. It's going to get behind. So we'll see what happens during this combat to see if this fight's still going to go. Okay, so the combat turn just ended, and kind of a mixed bag of results. I guess the moral victory for the Confederate player is that he knocked the Iron Brigade off of the clump of trees on Cemetery Ridge, and does control 3 of the victory point spots on Cemetery Hill. There was like a cascading retreat that went back through here that forced actually a 1 intact strength point unit actually off the board, and the retreat of the artillery right there. But the Union player still has a ton of fresh units in here. And the Confederate units are all down to mostly 1 or 2 strength points. So I think a good general back in these times, whoops, didn't mean to do that. A good general back in these times would have retreated from the field as the Confederate commander, just to preserve the army and not send them in anymore. There's still a lot of fresh people from the 5th Corps, even though we chased off 1, I think, this turn with the Confederate player. The Union player still has a ton of fresh guys over here that they wouldn't even need to rally during the night, so they could make it very painful on the Confederate player by staying not in the zone of control, but trying to stay so that the Confederate player was too close to rally, like they would still be in line of sight, unless they could dip behind some trees or something. So I think for a little after action, what the Confederate player probably did wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but they didn't do enough damage to the Union player on the first day and took too much damage. I mean, obviously because they lost technically at the end of the first day based on the victory conditions for the game. I think the Union side, what they did really well was the retreat from so long ago, starting over here with the cavalry. Instead of pressing the attacks on the first day, in the morning on the first day, just slowly falling back up onto the high ground and not really committing to too much combat. There was Hancock's charge, because if this was the real Gettysburg, there was not a Pickett's charge in this fake actual, or I mean in this fake play version of Gettysburg, because Pickett hasn't come onto the board yet. But Hancock came barreling through and was annihilated. There are a lot of units in the shattered Union unit box over there. A lot of them are small units, though, like 2 strength points, 3 strength points. There's also a lot over here, and a lot of these are 4, 5, a couple 8s, 6, and a 7. So more strength points in each individual unit. So it might look a little skewed, like, hey, the Union has a lot more actual units in the box, but I think it's probably pretty equal in the shattered units. But on the board, I think the Confederate player has a lot more demoralized and lost strength points. So that's where I'm going to call it. I hope you enjoyed this little playthrough. It's something different for this channel. I haven't done a hex encounter war game on the channel before, and I am going to do the time-lapse overview look and to post with this. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you're enjoying everything that's on this channel, and I will see you in the next one.